What is the deal, folks? It is your boy, Professor G, back at it. It is OG Sports Rap on the network. Thanks for hanging out with us as we continue to move the needle on conscious sports analysis. That's right. I mean, if you got brothers and sisters dominating the game, you got to have somebody that can understand what they bring into it, right? And I am that dude. And tonight, in our quality radio effort, at least according to me, it is Black History Month. We're going to go deep into the vault and pull out the greatness that is Doug Williams. Yes, boys and girls, that Doug Williams. Grambling State, HBCU Hall of Famer, Super Bowl MVP, and one of the curators of the college football showcase known as the HBCU Legacy Bowl, which is a combine / senior bowl for HBCU athletes. And it's the one place that the NFL can take a look at top prospects from NFL teams who may they want to bring into camp as a free agent, give a guy a shot on special teams and see how they work their way into start lineup. But we are sized, thrilled, excited to be joined by a legend of Black history. But when you look at Doug Williams, he ain't Black history. He's American history. You do what he did in the Super Bowl, you earn a certain level of reverence forever. And so we're looking forward to that chat, which should be coming along with you in about the next half an hour or so. So you definitely don't want to miss. We got 2 segments with Doug. It's going to be off the chart. Can't wait to talk to him from New Orleans, which could be my favorite town in America. It could be. Love the district. Care a great deal about Atlanta. But, there's something about New Orleans. Love me some New Orleans. Anyway, as we continue to move it along, our long nightmare has come to an end. 47 is not out of the White House. And Lord knows he looks like he's going to throw us into a war, but I digress. But the NBA second half of the season has resumed. And there are 10 games this evening. The one I'm keeping my eye on right now is the Pistons and the Knicks. A little bit later on, Boston is at Golden State. But I think this Pistons-Knicks matchup tonight is a game that's going to answer a lot of questions about both of those teams, because the Pistons are coming into the second half of the season with the top record in the Eastern Conference, and the Knicks were eliminated in the Eastern Conference Finals. So you got 2 teams with significant agendas and work to do in the East for positioning now, because the East is a beast. There's no doubt about that. I mean, you look at 1 through 8, it could go anywhere. I would have to say when it comes to the Western Conference this year, it would be safe to say Western Conference is somewhat of a toss-up, but you really have begun to see the cream rise to the top. You know what you're going to get in the world champs, OKC. Their question is health. All right. They've been dropping like flies, not with serious injuries, but the strains, the sprains, and the pulls and all that kind of stuff. As good as that roster is constructed, and it's deep, but there's this thing that there was a manager in Baltimore when I was growing up who used named Earl Weaver, Hall of Fame manager of the Orioles when they were great. And trust me, those of you who are 30 years old don't know nothing about the greatness of the Orioles. Nothing. I mean, Cal Ripken, Frank Robinson, Brooks Robinson, Eddie Murray, Al Bunbury. I mean, but and they always had a bunch of no-name kind of players that were on the bench that would come off and do some things. And Earl Weaver used to call that, well, we don't have depth. We have deep depth. That means you got good players that can come off the bench and there's not a significant drop-off. That's not the case in the East. I mean, it drops off dramatically when you don't have certain players, unless you have a player that can elevate your team, like who stands out? Jaylen Brown. Okay, Jaylen Brown's attitude has spread throughout the Celtics, which has kept them as a contender, which makes them dangerous going into the playoffs with or without Jason Tatum. Now, I think Boston got a shot to win it if they can get 15, 20 minutes a night from Tatum in the stretch drive. I look for him, and we probably got about another 20 games or so before you can start looking at him as the kind of candidate that can come back to make a difference in the Eastern Conference. To me, that's the swing player in the East. If Boston gets Jason Tatum back, even at 80% for 20 minutes a night, I think they can win the East. There it is. I think every team that grows into a championship contender has to go through potholes. Boston has made it through their potholes. They even have guys that have won it before already. They haven't forgot how to win. And, I don't think that there's going to be too much movement downwardly by teams who, made moves after the trade deadline. So when you start looking at the post-trade deadline landscape, several stars are making an appearance tonight for the first time for new teams. You got James Harden, who's already played with the Cavaliers, and they're 3-0 with him since the trade. Kristaps Porzingis, a little bit later on tonight, expected to make his debut for Golden State. You look at the Wizards, which continue to blow me away in my neck of the woods. They went under a massive roster overhaul. They got Trae Young, who's set for his season debut, although he had to wait and get healthy before the break. And then there's Fragile Davis, who's sidelined for the season. So he's just taking up space. And I just wonder at the end of the season, will that be a space he'll be taking up in Washington? Because I think with that asset and that cap space coming up, Washington could be a player depending on if they make the playoffs and how far they run. But I think the fact that not having a body like Anthony Davis is going to hurt them just a little bit. But what were the realistic expectations in Washington anyway? And then you got the MVP races. I mean, these are some interesting storylines all the way around. Think about the, first off, I got to give JB Bickerstaff and the crew with the Pistons at 40-13. I mean, this is crazy that you got 40 wins on the first half of the season. And I just don't think that this team is going to exhale. And really, when I look at the Pistons right now, I'm not quite sure they even know how good they are yet. They're young. They're babies. I remember Coach telling me one time about a freshman class that he had that was so talented, but they came to campus with Similac on their breath. And I get the feeling right now, I'm looking at a Pistons team that's incredibly talented, but I don't know if they understand how you got to elevate that game to the next level from a mentality standpoint, the game within the game. And that's what makes the great players great. They have a switch in postseason. Ever since I've been a child, there have been those who had another level to the game that they could find in postseason. All right, there's just a switch that goes off for the great ones. And this becomes the grinded out portion of the season. You're tired. You got a couple of back-to-backs in you. You need some rest. Your coach is drilling you. So you got to be there and up for practice. So, again, I like the Pistons, the way that they're constructed and the way that they're coached. And they play with confidence. But come on, man. You still got the top team. So if the finals were to have started this evening, you'd have Oklahoma City, who's leading the Western Conference, despite the rack of injuries to Chet Holmgren, to Jalen Williams. You've had injuries with SGA. This is a team that is 42-14 to open up the second half of the season, right? And they've been injured. This Oklahoma City is the best run franchise in the NBA. It is a small market team that is really probably pissing off the NBA because they're so good, but they're in such a small market. And if you look throughout the history of the league, certainly for the last 40 years or so, superstar talents that have elevated the brand of the league have all been in big markets. All of them. You just think about it. It just kind of worked out in the 80s and 90s that, let's see, Magic Johnson was in L.A., Patrick Ewing was in New York, Michael Jordan was in Chicago. Those are the top three media markets, and it's working. And what's happening with Oklahoma City is you got the best franchise. You do. The way that they have built themselves and constructed themselves to survive in a small market. And for all intents and purposes, while we look at Oklahoma City as a basketball market, that's a football country. Don't go around thinking that the Sooners and the Cowboys ain't the biggest things around there. So it's amazing to watch Oklahoma City. People are sleeping on them, if you ask me, because they can win it again. It's about the health. Never before in a season have I looked at the second half and think to myself, who's going to stay healthy in order to lead their team into the playoffs. It's a crazy scenario right now. And then we'll talk a little bit later on about, significant health issues that are plaguing the NBA. And I don't know what we can do about it. I don't think the game is nowhere near as physical as it was back in the day. You know, in the 80s and early 90s, it was no blood, no foul. Now you got, ticky-tack calls all over the place and players are dropping like flies. Now, that's one that I don't understand. But I'll say this, and here's two teams that, to me, are going to be defined by the health of their superstar players. Teams like San Antonio. Look, Victor Wembanyama is the greatest freak in the history of basketball. 7'5", you can't stop him. He's the unstoppable force. The only thing that stops him is himself. Really. When you can take off and in 2 steps dunk from the free throw line, nobody's going to stop that. But can he stay healthy? That's a lot of body on a slim frame playing a physical position. And I like the Spurs, but you have to be concerned about the health of Wemby. I like the Houston Rockets a whole lot, but they're not the same team without Kevin Durant. So it'll be interesting to see the matchup in that little pocket of the Southwest between Oklahoma City, who opens second half of the season at 42-14, and they lead the West. The Spurs and the Rockets are right on their heels, and they do have matchups that are critical. So it's a wonderful time. And just to think, we get the Pistons and OKC. Wow. And I will say, it may not be sexy for the television ratings, but I could watch 7 games of Oklahoma City and Detroit because I'm down with the fresh players, youngsters making a name for themselves. Now, you got some old traditionalists that still want to see LeBron, but he's not the LeBron that he was anymore. It's your boy, Professor G. Mark Grass, OG Sports Rap on the network. Remember, we got Doug Williams coming up in about 30 minutes. And download the mobile app because we all we got. Professor G. Mark Gray back at it as OG Sports Rap continues. Thanks for hanging out with us. Don't forget, coming up in about 20 minutes, we're going to be joined by the man, the myth, the legend that is Doug Williams from the HBCU Legacy Classic. But first, there are times, despite the sore knees, the ailments that come from less than successful career as an amateur athlete, you get to moments where you just look down at the next generation and you got to be an OG. You just got to be like, what do you stand for? And I think that's kind of where I am right now with this Darren Peterson situation. And for those of you who don't know, Darren Peterson of Kansas, a basketball player who you've probably heard so much about, who was good enough to drop 23 points in just 18 minutes last night. But then after the second half, he came back out and told his coach, I can't play anymore. Okay. And this exit was attributed to cramping. Now, how do you deal with cramping? All right, let's be clear about something. You have a lot of starch in a meal before the game. And guess what? I'm pretty sure with the sports medicine department, and as much as Kansas basketball means to that state, this dude, if he had cramps, they'd have figured out a way to keep him hydrated. Because we all know that cramps are what? A product of hydration, unless they're menstrual, which I have to start questioning this young man about, okay? Because throughout this entire season, he's been limited by a variety of issues. Your hamstring sprain, a sprained ankle, a quad injury. And I've heard the quad before. And then there's like flu-like symptoms. I'm like, damn, dude, I'm paying you NIL money. You're expected to be the number one pick in the draft, and you got 23 points in the first half and come out with cramps after halftime? Come on, man. Dude, no, you too young for that. You 19 years old, you cramping like that? How'd you get the NIL money? Are they so busy? And see, this is the problem in this pimp your kid out society that we now living in. I said it, you NIL parents, looking to pimp your kid out so you can get visibility in your community for being Darren Peterson's kid, dad or mom or whatever. And he's bringing home big checks that I'm pretty sure y'all are spending. Let's be clear about something. This is the problem with the NIL family, okay? It blurs the vision. It stunts what athletics is supposed to be about. And college athletics is now a pro game. So can you imagine what it would be like if you went to work before lunch and was stellar? You got like 4 or 5 projects out of the way, but you still have 4 or 5 more to do in the 4 hours after work, right? You think your boss gonna let you roll? I mean, and what happens with this guy? This guy is a number 1 pick. Everybody says that he's the best player in the country. But see, here's the problem. The team has already proven that they can win without him, okay? And they did that when they went to Arizona when he had some other kind of malady or ailment that he could not play. Look, your best ability for your team is availability. And if you ain't available to your team during the ages of 18 to 22, how available are you going to be for your team between the ages of 24 and 26 when you're on your first contract? I mean, this dude is costing himself. There's no way. If you're an NBA team and you still, and whoever's going to be the number 1 team right now, we don't know that. There's a battle for futility for this guy. But this dude right here could be a cancer on the NBA. I'm sorry. Darren Peterson is first off, he doesn't want to compete. You'll never be great at anything in life unless you want to compete. You're supposed to hate losing. And when your team wins and you're not contributing, you should hate that. And when a dude puts up 23 points, 2 rebounds, a block, and a steal on 7 of 12 shooting in the first half, comes out in the second half with cramps, what the hell were y'all doing in there? Really? And they treat you for cramps. You got tablets for it. You got fruit. Yeah, let's be clear for a second. At halftime, it's a hydration thing. Cramps are a product of dehydration. You can't tell me that University of Kansas doesn't know how to keep their basketball players hydrated. They've been doing it since before the days of Paul Pierce. Okay? Let's go back that far. You know, when Roy Williams was out there coaching before he left to go to North Carolina, we didn't see a whole lot of players that were cramping. Now, again, I don't want it to seem like I'm defending Bill Self because, and I'll say it on the record, my favorite college basketball coach, well, my second favorite, was Gary Williams, University of Maryland, long distance coach. And the standing joke when you would get around coaches at the NABC convention and stuff like that, they would talk about how Bill Self, even before NIL, had the biggest checks to write to players that he wanted to come there. They would move families out there. I'll say it on the record. Josh Selby from, I want to say Baltimore, somewhere in the Maryland area, all right? By no means a rock star or a, you know, we're not talking about somebody that's ever going to be considered Einstein, okay? But they was able to get him in school. And you know what Josh Selby did until they found out that there was some under-the-table stuff that was going on? He showed up every damn night. And he balled. He didn't get a shot because of the nefarious things that were going on behind the scenes with his family, which leads me to believe something is going on nefarious behind the scenes with Peterson's family. So busy, you know, because you do have NIL parents who become so damn protective of their children, they become annoyances to the coaching staff and to the rest of the teammates. I've seen that before. You know, you'll have a young kid who's expected to be the breadwinner of the family in a couple of years when we had hardships type stuff. I've seen it. Okay? Friends, family, infidels, pimping out a kid a little status, figuring that they can look out for him. AAU coaches were good like that. Kids are playing. But now, in the world of teams tanking games, right, why are we so shocked that players are tanking now? Just, again, this thing to me with the tanking and load management and stuff, which is crazy because in college basketball, you play maybe 30 games. You're between the ages, more than likely, of 18 and 22. Wow. You've been playing back-to-back, tough travel team schedules. You're probably playing somewhere 80, 90 games a year, right? And now, when the money is there on the line and you got opportunity to stand for yourself, and get this, in a basketball-crazed state where if you don't win the Big 12 and you don't make it to the Final Four, it's devastating for the state. And coaches have to start being held more accountable for wanting to get the best athlete, but not the best character for the team. That's the problem we're in right now with competitive, quote, amateur, end quote, athletics. Yeah, you got too many handlers, too many caretakers, too many people who are in his ear. Well, you ain't got to do that, man. You ain't got to take that, man. And the whole while, they're creating this climate of arrogant youngsters who are coming into the association with a sense of privilege. And that is what we're doing here right now, because this is a character question. Now, I'm not going to blame the young man, because if you're a parent and you see flaws in somebody's character, that's your fault. That's how you raised your kids. That's the values that you've given to him. And what we've seen is, and I'm calling Darren Pearson out, his family out, and to a lesser extent, Bill Self. Because everybody, look, you want to send a message to your team? You suspend that dude for 2 or 3 games. Hey, or tell him, or give him one of those injury rules. You out the next 3 games, just stay in the dorm. You can't even sit on the bench during the game. Take the game away from him. Take it away. Hey, sometimes when you got a kid, you have to take away a favorite toy in order for them to get their lives in order. That's period. That's how it is. You know, disciplining children is tough. You hate to have to discipline your child. But this is childish, okay? And there's too much protection for behaviors that come off as unsavory. And you can't tell me it's not being sanctioned by his folk. I'm sorry, it is. There's an agenda there. Now, I don't know if Kansas has the money to do a private investigation on it, but there's something behind the scenes with this kid that is not right. And what I would hate to do is see, all right, let's say he plays himself back into shape, if you will, and he stops cramping in time for the Big 12 tournament. Then he plays, because the tournament is like at least 3 days in a row, you got to win a game. All right, if this dude can't get recovered within 4 or 5 days, and you're not playing these back-to-back games, because in the NCAA tournament, you're playing every 48 hours if you win. It is about surviving and advancing. That's what it is. How's Kansas going to survive in the NCAA tournament when you're banking on your top star who may be cramping? We're not talking about a torn ACL. We're not talking about a broken femur. No. We're not talking about strains, sprains, or aches. Because guess what? Champions play through that. And we're in a generation right now where the privilege that goes with talent and looks is destroying college and pro basketball because you're getting paid nonetheless. And when there's a semblance of malfeasance there, if you ask me, sorry, it is. And I'm going to call it out. It seems to me like parents are teaching this kid to tank. This kid to tank. So he won't hurt himself, so he can still be the number one player in the draft. From all reports and most scouting services, this kid is the number one pick in the draft. So maybe his agenda is, I don't want to end up like, say, Jason Tatum last year or Tyrese Halliburton in the finals. Maybe that's the agenda. I don't know. But whatever it is, it's an agenda that, the NCAA really needs to look at now. All right, this whole load management when players are available but tanking. There's no rule in college basketball for tanking. But then again, it would have to take the leadership and the authority of the NCAA to come up with a visionary rule that would at least cost the kid a game's pay. I mean, we're paying athletes. If you play half a game, you only get half of your game check, right? I mean, it's off the charts right now. It is. And this is where, and I will continue to keep my foot up the ass of the NCAA, because stuff like this could have been handled with legislation and vision. But then again, this is the NCAA. What's the last visionary idea they had? Yeah, Title IX. You're right. Anyway, it's OG Sports Rap on the network. Thanks for hanging out with your boy, Professor G. Remember, download the mobile app, because at the end of the day, we all we got. It is OG Sports Rap. I am Professor G, and I thank you for letting me be a part of what you're doing this evening. Now, remember, the barbershop stays open, so you can always set a spell, have a cold one, get a line up, and then you can take the knowledge that we drop on you back to your folk and school them on things that they really just don't get. And here's something that I don't get, but deep down inside, I think it makes some sense. And this is one of those subjects that's been making its way around the whole talk show circuit all day. And I think it was a fascinating conversation earlier this week between Draymond Green, my boy, one of Sparty. He said that he would, quote, love to hold the title of commissioner of the NBA one day. Think about that. Draymond Green being open to run the NBA. Now, after chuckling, well, actually, I laughed my ass off. Secondarily, I think it makes some sense. We've had all these businessmen, talking head types who capitulate to the owners and basically have to bow down and kiss their ring, which I don't know if Draymond would bow down to anybody, but you need somebody who's very transparent, passionate about the game, and quite frankly, willing to fight for what is right other than greed. And I think that, say what you want about, well, David Stern saved the league. Okay, after Larry O'Brien left and you had the drug programs and bad TV, it was Stern that made basketball a world's game. Talk all you want about anybody else. The most transformative person, in my opinion, for the NBA who didn't wear sneakers and a jersey was clearly David Stern. He got the marketing. He understood collective bargaining. He understood how you turn players into stars who become social celebrities. And your game grew exponentially. There was a savvy. There was a different flavor that Stern dealt with. Now, good, bad, or indifferent. I mean, there were a lot of things that ruffled the feathers of the way Stern handled things. There seemed to be somewhat of a tiered program between the superstars and the regular players, and there was a chasm. I think a lot of people thought that they were left out of the endorsement deals and things like that. But Green says that he hasn't decided to see the league continue to grow and improve. And he says that this would allow him to leave the game in a better place than when he found it. That takes a lot of humility to be willing to put yourself on blast like that. Now, again, this was a conversation with Skip Bayless, and I dig it. I have no problem with anybody want to give something back, because the problem with the NBA these days is that the demographic gets younger. They don't believe in giving back. Sorry. Every once in a while you do find players, and really, we're not talking about giving back to the community in the sense of charitable endeavors. Most of these dudes have 501c3 foundations, which A, gives them a tax break, and B, gives them an opportunity to get back into their community. Now, I will say this. If Draymond is truly committed to community, right, then he probably wants to do something other than basketball as a commissioner. That's going to take you into the world of deal-making, strong-arm tactics. And again, we know that this dude has a strong arm. And if you ask LeBron, he'll tell him he got strong legs too. Remember the kick in the crotch during the NBA Finals? Right. That's what I'm talking about. Now, again, the dude has had some anger management moments that I'm quite sure that the owners would not like in a room wherein they're dealing with issues of finance, marketing, player development, things like that. Because I think that Draymond would be in the room with owners and be like, look, I played this game, and he'd scream on them, and they're not ready for that. They're not. So I tell you this, though, what better player or what better person should be considered for the next role as steward of the league than somebody who played in it? And if not Draymond, then who? Who would want that responsibility? Because there's some bright minds in the game, on the sidelines, that could have ideas and philosophies that are more in tune with the future while holding on to the history of the past. Because, see, let's be real for a second. History's always going to be there. How do you elevate and grow? And I would love to see what is the marketing plan that he had. Now, this is where, you ever hear the term of paying it forward? You know, Pete Myers, who was a teammate of Michael Jordan and was the consummate role player for Phil Jackson, is one of Draymond's mentors. And he says that he gave him the belief that he owes it to the game to help the next generation of players succeed and get paid. Well, I don't know how much more paid NBA players can be making after this series of contract negotiations, number one, and just the way that the lottery and all of the other approaches to bringing in immature kids into the league. See, if Draymond really wants to have an impact and change the game, it's a lot to do with the way players are being developed. And I think that that's the even bigger job that we have to deal with in terms of USA basketball, which Grant Hill runs. And again, aside from putting together a pool of players for the Olympic tournament, what are you doing to grow the game? Because the trickle down in basketball, to me, has to start with USA basketball. It used to be the AAU programs, but now that AAU has been sort of absorbed by USA basketball, where's their role in the growth and development of the league? That's a really sweet position that Grant Hill has. But I would tend to argue that you could have two minds like that at the top of the food chain. One who is, by nature smooth, thought-provoking, and insightful, and the other one who is thought-provoking and insightful and a hard ass. And every once in a while, I think that the problem with pro sports and collective bargaining, and we're about to find that out with baseball, and for the record, that's the thing that disappoints me most about the Tony Clark controversy, is the fact that you had a brother who was president of the Players Union, and he went off the track. But you look at Tony Clark's body of work for his constituents, it was impeccable. For 10 years, baseball salaries have risen. There was a thought process behind what Tony Clark was doing with baseball players' best interest in mind. Where do they go now in their particular situation where you got a collective bargaining agreement that's up on December 1st and you have nobody in leadership? You've lost your general, the guy at the top of the food chain, the commander in chief, if you will. NBA doesn't have that, but they had one in Major League Baseball. And there's a blueprint out there now. And the first thing is, don't go around sleeping with your brother's wife. Let's just put that out there, because there are layers to that Tony Clark story right now. 24 hours ago when it was breaking and it was new, now we have information and we talked about yesterday about how this dude, in addition to possibly embezzling, and that's what the criminal charges will come up, but we've seen the model work in baseball. And the unfortunate circumstance is that the trickle down of Tony Clark being a Black American former professional athlete who now we have found out has some nefarious dealings with the NFL Players Association and creating, fraudulent marketing groups. My question now would be, does Tony Clark's behavior in the role of leading baseball's union adversely affect a guy like Draymond Green, who could go a long way to, keeping the league on track and most importantly, making sure that the players get whatever they need to perform at the highest level. Now, he'd have to work on load management. And Draymond traditionally had never been a player that was out for a whole lot of time until, as he's gotten older, he starts breaking down with the strains the leg injuries, the backs, all that kind of stuff, that's a sign of wear and tear. But when it comes to thinking, and I think that's where people sell Draymond Green short. He's a very thought-provoking dude. You watch him on TNT when he interacts. You know, everybody talks about how I'm catching all the technical fouls. I look at that as passion. You can't never say that Draymond Green didn't give you your money's worth when he was healthy on the floor. Now, the trick is keeping him healthy on the floor. Or better yet, keeping him on the floor because of attitude. But you can't deny his contributions to the game. You can't deny his on-court basketball acumen. I'm not going to deny his business savvy because he seems to know a thing or two about making money and then making it work for him. All right? So this notion that he's just some kind of hothead who, you know, goes off the deep end on the regular, that's a false narrative, y'all. It really is. So I'm not going to say that he would be the be-all and end-all to all that ails the NBA. But I will say something like this. In a world of evolution, you know, constantly evolving, you got to evolve with the times. What better way for basketball's next revolution, which is going to be televised? Well, no, it's not going to be televised. It's going to be streamed on like Peacock and ESPN Plus, but whatever. It's still, you still have to have somebody who is close enough to the contemporary past to bring some of that vision, because really, the marketing of the league has gone to another level, okay? It's a far cry from where it was with Larry O'Brien, who was just trying to keep the lights on. David Stern kept the lights on and grew the global brand. Adam Silver, who was his right-hand man, is doing a masterful job as a caretaker of the product. But you can only take care so long, right? Sooner or later, the patient either gets well or they die. It's just that simple. So I'm looking at Draymond, at the very least, as a potential caretaker for the league that we love so much. Somebody who understands, you know, it's players. And we saw with the All-Star game. When the players have passion, you get a better product. It's hard to be passionate for people when you don't believe they have your back. I think a player in the front office of the NBA with significant pull and power is what the league needs. And especially with the foreign players and the diversity in the association, it just can't be run by, you know, white guys in suits, smoking cigars, having stiff drinks if the game is going to grow and survive and be what we want it to be. Stick with us. The incomparable Doug Williams joins us on the other side as we head to New Orleans and get the inside scoop on the HBCU Legacy Bowl and a whole lot more. It's OG Sports Rap on the network. Remember, download the mobile app. We all we got. We continue with the incomparable Doug Williams here on OG Sports Rap here on the network. Professor G. Mark Gray is in the house with you at this hour and joined by Hall of Fame legend Doug Williams. And Doug, people don't know that you are a championship winner, not only in the NFL, but in college football. You won the SWAC championship long before, quite frankly, there was a Coach Prime phenomenon. First off, talk about the grind that you had to go through, because I remember you were offensive coordinator one time at Navy. I mean, you really had to take some steps to get what seems to be a lot easier for some people these days.
You know, coaching is something I always wanted to do. Even when I went to Grambling, you know, I didn't dream. I hear people talking about I dreamed about playing in the National Football League. You know, I didn't dream about playing National Football League. Kind of like what James Harris always say, that he was dreaming and he woke up, it was a nightmare. You know, that's what it was like for black quarterbacks back then. But no, you know, I felt like when I went to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, you know, my dream actually was to eventually be a coach. And that's what I wanted to do. And I was fortunate enough after I finished playing and getting the job and going to BET, working BET with Black College in entertainment at that particular time. Worked for the state of Louisiana as a drug-free kind of counselor, going around the high schools talking about drugs and things. But I found out that wasn't for me. So coaching is what I wanted to do. Took a high school job about 45 minutes from my hometown in Zacro in New Roads, Louisiana, Punky Parish High School for a year. And then, I decided to leave that and go back and work for drug-free Louisiana. And then my own high school job came open. I took that job. And it was one thing that people don't really know, Mark, probably one of the greatest things that I feel like, not that I come, but the young people at Cheneyville High School, which was northeast at that time, up the north part of the parish, we finished an undefeated season for the first time in the history of that school. And we finished 13-1. We lost in the semifinals of the state championship game. But I tell you who we beat along the way, and to this day, these kids, man, love it because one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play in the National Football League, we beat a Peyton Manning-led team in the playoffs. To this day, man, I go home, and that's one of the things that the players always talk about was that game. And that's something I would never forget, man. When you see these young guys realizing when they see Peyton Manning on TV, man, it glows their heart because they say to themselves, we beat Peyton Manning. And that's a good feeling. That's a good feeling. But I did that, and when I left there, and I hate to leave because I got a call from George Chump, who had been, one of my assistant coaches at Tampa, to come to the Naval Academy. And it was a tough move for me, but I felt like if I was going to ever go up, I had to leave the high school. And I went to the Naval Academy and not really realizing that George Chump was on had one foot in the grave, one foot on the banana peel as far as his job was concerned. And after the season, he lost his job. But Mr. Lingo, who was the AD at that time, wanted me to stay. Charlie Wellesley came in, and I don't know if anybody know Charlie Wellesley, but he was out of Utah, and he came in with about 5 of his assistant coaches. They all was wearing long coats, with the moving the long riders, and they all walked in with cowboy boots on with a long coat. And I said to myself, no way in the world I can stay here, man. And I left, and actually at that particular time went to Jacksonville to work for 2 years, man. I was fortunate enough to get a job with the Jacksonville Jaguars for 2 years as a scout. And then Morehouse came coming in 1997. They asked me did I want to come and be the head coach, so I went and interviewed for it. And eventually Tom Coughlin was at Jacksonville, and he told me at that particular time that he wanted to put me in the front office, not really even thinking about it because coaching was on my mind. And I told him that I was going to go to Atlanta to coach Morehouse, and he gave me his blessing. And I went down there in 97, and then Coach Rob retired after the 97 season, and then come Grambling calling, and it's hard to say no to Grambling. And I went to take that interview. The thing about that interview, it was good because everybody wanted to know what could I bring to Grambling. I had to laugh at them. I told them nothing but an opportunity to try to get this team up to snap. Because at that particular time, Coach Rob, bless his soul, had 2 straight 3-8 seasons.
Gosh.
And my brother, my youngest brother who played behind me, my center who's my center, we met one day and they both was telling me, let somebody else go in there. Don't go in there behind Coach Robinson. And I said, no, what's a better time to go in there? I mean, where am I going? You can't go nowhere but up, And somebody said, well, you can't replace Coach Robinson. I agree. You can't. You couldn't. You can't put your shoes in his shoes. No. What you do to his shoes, you bronze them, put them on a pedestal, and put your own shoes up on there. And that was my mentality when I went in there. And, I recruited a lot of young guys. They played. We got beat. We went from 3-8 to 5-6. And the next year we went from 5-6 to 7-4. And the next 3 years we won the SWAC 3 straight consecutive years. Because I always say, you got some young puppies, they're going to grow up to be dogs one day. And the kids, they play well, man. And I was grateful that those guys played for me. And in 2003, John Gruden called me to bring me to Tampa. And that was another situation that I didn't want to leave. But if you're going to move up, you got to move. That's what life is. And I went to Tampa. And from there, spent my time in Tampa and then eventually came back to Grambling for a couple of years. First year I got there, we won the SWAC again. So I figured out of 8 years at Grambling, 4 SWAC championship, it wasn't bad. I thought I did a decent job.
I did too.
And for some reason, the president didn't like how I was running things, and he decided to go another direction. I told him good. So when he fired me, I called Washington, and Bruce Allen was the general manager, and I just asked Bruce, you got a spot for me? And the only thing he said, yeah, we got one. And I look back at that as, to me, what it tells me is how you treat people along the way. And I was fortunate enough to be where I am today. Now I'm going into my 12th year, which I feel pretty good about.
Yeah, Doug Williams is our guest. What is your role again? I just know you as the Super Bowl MVP with the team formerly known as the Redskins.
Yeah, I'm the senior advisor to the general manager. Okay. Old guy like me, they make sure he don't have to do no heavy lifting, but some lifting.
Don't have to take those long road trips.
I don't.
No scouting anymore?
Oh, the only trip I take is with the team. The only scouting I do is in my office on the monitor, watching the film.
Well, I'm a dude that lived in Louisiana when Burt Jones was quarterback, all right? I'll frame that because we got ourselves another quarterback up here who spent some time in Louisiana, Jaden Daniels. What's it like for you being an OG to watch the new G and all the potential that he has?
Well, it's a privilege, to be in the same building with Jaden. Such a, human being, man. He's such a great individual. And I always say that he's a better individual than he is a football player. And that's what I say about Jaden. And the good thing about it this year is going to even be better because, my son is the quarterback coach up there now. So he'll get a chance to work with Jaden directly. And, I used to text Jaden and see how he's doing, talk to him. And since he's been gone, and my son, the quarterback coach, I hadn't did either because I figured talking to one Doug Williams would be enough. He don't need 2 Doug Williams in his ears.
But what he had me was when he showed up at, I think, his opening press conference with your jersey on. How did that make you feel in that moment?
Well, the first preseason game, because, the players ride different buses than we do to the airport. And, I never saw him because when he got on the plane, I'm sitting in the plane, I never saw him. But when we was in line going to this preseason game, I think it was the Jets, if I'm not for sure. It was in New York. And I got off the bus and I looked up and I seen 7-2. And everybody said, Jaden got your jersey on, man. I think what it was for me at that particular moment was the ultimate respect. And from when that happened, you can appreciate the respect that Jaden showed me, man, and show you what kind of person that he really is.
And as we wind it down with the legend that is Doug Williams, don't forget he's putting his Laurel and Hardy efforts into the HBCU Legacy Bowl. If you're near television and you jonesing for some football, this is the HBCU, basically all-star showcase for Black college football talent. It is what it is. It's well done. And big ups to my guy, Steve Weich with NFL Network. Good Howard guy. Has been leading the charge to help you, Doug. How much bigger and better do you think this thing can get? The Legacy Bowl, that is.
Well, it's hard to say how much bigger, better, because every year it has grown. Every year we feel a lot better about it. So, it's just a matter of being able to do it every year. And I think the more we do it, the better it's going to be. And hopefully a lot of people wrap their arm around it and come out and support it. I think that's the most important thing. We're going to have the bowl game regardless, but it's good that if people come out and support these young guys, because that's, everybody, if you're an athlete, one thing you want people in the stands so
Right.
they can show you what they can do. So I'm looking forward to getting a lot better than what it is today because it's gotten better since the first day. So at the end of the day, man, this is, to me, from a passion standpoint, there's the Black College Football Hall of Fame, and that's the All-State Legacy Bowl, and that's the job fair that goes along with this. Because what the job fairs do, and you know, on Friday, the job fair is going to be down at the Civic Center in New Orleans. You know, it's not just for the football players. You know, it's for HBCUs, whether not you're a sophomore, junior, or senior, to get an opportunity to either get a job or an intern. And I think that is big in itself because you got over 1,500 kids that come down there, and now the young ladies can take part in it. That's, to me, that's the part that really gets to me is the fact that not only the players get an opportunity, everybody get an opportunity. I think that's the way it should be.
And it's desperately needed in an area like that, too, where people having opportunities that are easily able to access as opposed to having to travel outside of the market, which sometimes can be a tough financial circumstance for a lot of them these days. So it's great to see you doing the work, Doug. I'm sure this is something that kind of keeps you fresh and young, too, doesn't it?
Oh, believe me. Whenever Zoom came in, I didn't know it was going to be like now because I do more Zoom than the law allows, man. You know, sometimes you have about 3 or 4 Zoom a week, and you just realize you zoomed out.
Well, you know something? In a strange kind of way, that's our generation's way of giving you your flowers.
Well, I certainly appreciate it, man. I just remember one thing, man, when the reporter asked Coach Rob, you know, he said, what is it going to take for Doug Williams to make it in the NFL? And Coach Rob just leaned back in his chair and he said, opportunity.
And so let it be written, so let it be said. Here's the incomparable Doug Williams, a Super Bowl legend, also a legend that is giving something back. And you the personification of, you know, somebody you want to be like when you grow up. It's my guy, Doug Williams. Hey, I'll see you back. Travel safely back to the DMV, Doug. Look forward to hooking up with you soon.
All right, Mark. Thanks for having me.
We got more of what you came here for on the other side, folks. It's OG Sports Rap on the network. Remember, download the mobile app. We all we got. What is the deal as we head towards the finish line of this edition of the quality radio product that we know of as OG Sports Rap? I'm Professor G, and I'm going to keep the bar open just a little longer to celebrate some Black girl magic after we had just finished our conversation with a Black legend, a Black college legend. Now, you're going to hear a lot about, and I'm sure you have in the last few hours, about Team USA, the women, beating Canada in an unbelievable hockey match. When the overtime, they had the 3-on-3. It was great. Team USA was down in this game, if you didn't have a chance to see it, 1-0 till about 2 minutes to go in the game or thereabouts. And that's where Black girl magic took over, as Layla Edwards put a beautiful pass in between 2 defenders, and it was tapped into goal, which forced the overtime, and then the Americans won. It has to be noted that on that goal that sent the team to overtime, the assist goes to a Black American woman. So let it be written, so let it be said, that without the assist on the game-tying goal by a sister, the only sister on the team, okay, let's be clear about that. So for all the sisters that are the only ones that are in your department, if you still have a job where you are in a department, you should feel good about this. This should be the good. This is all about a Title IX moment. You know, imagine that. Who would have ever thought that you'd see not only women in the United States playing hockey, but a Black woman who's been a big contributor to the tournament. Layla Edwards had a big goal in their opening match, which helped them win a game. Okay, so this ain't no token Negro DEI stuff. This is a sister who, when given an opportunity to make something happen big, she made it happen big. And where have I seen that before? Oh, the greatness of loveliness. Gabby Douglas in the Olympics, who caught shade, and sisters, y'all owe her one because y'all was killing her and all she was doing was making tens and y'all talking about her hair. You got to own that. And you can't say anything about this young woman because she just stands out as a tremendous athlete. And I'm not quite sure that she's getting the recognition right now that she deserves for her moment in this piece of American Olympic history. So we're going to bang this monkey real loud for Layla Edwards until she gets hers. I would suspect there should be some kind of endorsement deal. She's still in college, which is amazing. So she's going to make ridiculous NIL money. But I just hope this. I really do. And I shouldn't be framing this historic moment that should be all about what's good in America. I just can't wait to see what's going to happen on Truth Social overnight. I'm serious. I hope I'm wrong. I hope people appreciate the fact that she's just as American as they are and give her flowers. So let me be the first, okay? What a play. And you kept waiting in that moment to think, wow, she's out there on the floor or on the ice, as you would say. And you're like, wow, she's at the point. And basically when you're at the point, you're like a point guard in basketball with a stick. You dictating the tempo. And her assist was brilliant. And they went into overtime and they won it. Just arguably, the biggest assist in the history of Americans women's hockey. Why? Because you only do the Olympics like every 4 years. And then there was Layla Edwards. And the thing that shocked me about NBC's coverage was you never got an interview from her this afternoon, nor did you see in any of the cutaways were there close-ups of her after she had done what she did. This is a historic milestone that needs to be amplified. And it's unfortunate that I think, the American Olympic Network is caught in a bind. I mean, you have to be able to frame that narrative in a journalistic context. And let's be real. The story is what the story is. Team USA has won the hockey gold medal in women's hockey. All right, let's just talk about that. And they don't do that were it not for a black woman wearing number 10, repping on the Stars and Stripes. So, again, I'm going to celebrate it. I'm a big jersey guy. If I could find a Edwards jersey, I'd be all over that. But this is just amazing to watch how, and I will say this, sometimes I've been somewhat disappointed in how guys were victimized somewhat, and maybe that's too strong a word because of Title IX, but what we're seeing right now, certainly as far as sports is concerned, when you equal the playing field, and I think really that's what scares people of that's what scares maggots, quite frankly. This is an empowering moment for women. All right, let's be clear about that. And hockey, and it's really a big thing because you beat Canada, and you beat Canada in their sport. Now, again, I think there might be some comeuppance tomorrow when the men, I guess the men's semifinals are tomorrow. We will get maybe a Canada-USA matchup on Saturday or Sunday if things hold true to form, and that could be epic. I mean, I remember the one, wow. I think they were in Vancouver or whatever when Team USA and Canada went into overtime, and it was one of the greatest hockey games ever. I'm glad this game didn't put us through that. But in a time where we had a discussion earlier about the Kansas guard, Darren Peterson, taking himself out of games, He was cramping too much the other night. He put his coach in a position where he had to defend the fact that the guy's playing for himself and not his team. It was great to see, and there's no getting around this now. This is Layla Edwards. Her name is etched in Olympic history now. And really, at the end of the day, that's what the whole big thing about the Olympics is. It's about what you stamp is there in history. And there will always be a moment in Olympic hockey where you can now say there was a woman who had an assist that led to the overtime goal that won the game. That's the narrative. Don't let the jerks who are going to take shots, and they will be coming, and probably places like Saskatoon and Manitoba in Canada, quite frankly. But still, it's a great moment. and what another notch in the history of American history for Black people. Can't get away from that. Sorry. And guess what? You can't erase this because it's chronicled by the Olympics. Mm-hmm. So 47 is pretty much going to have to deal with the fact that he's going to have to appreciate some girl or a Black woman shine. Now, it'll be interesting to see if they make it to the White House or if they get invited, which I doubt. I mean, because that just strokes every bit of narcissism that's in your boy's back pocket. But this is one of those moments of, Black pride and success that you really want to rub in the face of somebody like that. Right? You don't, no DEI stuff over here. When you deliver in a big clutch moment like that, let's give this sister her props. And yeah, there were other people who had been to 4 or 5 Olympics on that team. They played well. They got them to the point where you get to overtime and win the game. But this was just a resilient effort by the women. And I was that dude that came in to the home office and had to get down for some work. I said, now, wait a minute. The game's on. And I get here and it's like just at the end of the second period and we're down 1-0. And I said, okay, well, we could have some drama here if Team USA comes back. And every once in a while, when you have a gut feeling in this business, it comes through. And I said, something, while I'm getting ready for the whole show, I need to make sure I'm in touch with this game because something about Layla Edwards that I needed to see. Playing for the gold medal, first Black woman on the USA Olympic hockey team, and to be in a moment that won't define the match, but definitely extended the match. That's extraordinary feat. I'm getting choked up just thinking about what I watched. I've been watching the Olympics since there were no women hockey games. Okay, let's be clear about that. Much less the thought of seeing a Black woman in a USA hockey sweater is something that was far beyond my realm of comprehension as late as 10 years ago. And because hockey traditionally is one of those sports that does not take kindly to brown people. It is what it is. Now, Layla Edwards has game. She's playing, hopefully. Now, that's somebody that the hockey league, because the women do have, I think they call it the PWHL, the Professional Women's Hockey League. I think it's what they're calling it now. Kind of like WNBA on skates. Really. Okay. But I just hope that this opens up greater opportunities. It was a magnificent match with a great deal of drama. And one of the, I guess if this were a movie, we probably would call it a supporting actress who became a star because her role was so good. This would be like the Academy Award performance of the Olympics. I mean, this is good freaking stuff. How you feeling about that, JD? As a matter of fact, I'm wondering, did he stick around to watch the women's gold medal match? If you're supposed to be leading the Olympic delegation, And you're supposed to be at the arena watching the girls. But, I mean, if you get booed mercilessly like they did at the opening ceremonies, it might make you think twice. And then again, you know, his virtues, that whole 3 steps behind, let me lead type stuff, it may not even have resonated with him. But I'll be interested to see over the next 24 hours on that godforsaken website what kind of nasty, despicable picture or statement will come out about the USA women's hockey team, and in particular, Layla Edwards. I'm serious. I'm not encouraging it, but we got to be prepared for it. And I would hope that a guy who, you know, supposedly wants everybody to be pro-American will celebrate A, American women, and B, the fact that we finally crossed the ethnic threshold, which now will open up doors for more black women. I mean, in context, I think what we're looking at here is to U.S. hockey, Layla Edwards has just become the Dominique Dawes of her sport. And understand where I'm coming from. There were people who didn't think that you'd see a Gabby Douglas after you saw Dominique Dawes. And then after Gabby Douglas, there comes Simone Biles. Again, maybe I'm getting too far ahead of myself, but I think down the road here, there's going to be a seminal moment. And amongst the great black Olympic champions, she got to get her spot right now. That's going to do it for me, for Professor 3, 2, 1. That's going to do it for me, Professor G. Not pouring any more drinks, not trimming you up. Going to shut it down for 22 hours and we'll crank it up and do it again. It's OG Sports Rap on the network. Remember, download the mobile app. We all we got. Deuces.